have Tim Shane, a fellow member of DFWSEM board and BBB. Um, yeah, take it away.
Awesome. Well, a little bit about BBB. I originally became came to DFWSEM when I was just starting out with the Dallas Better Business Bureau. I want to say like 2011, 2012. Um, and one of the big things at that time, was that BBB made a really good backlink, for businesses. And most people were selling it kind of like for a plaque or a sticker on the door. But when I was able to show the digital influence that BBB would have, it usually gave people a new perspective of a Better Business Bureau. Um, but I'm also here with my personal LLC that I've had. It's about to be 30 years old coming up, called Shane Arts, which I didn't come up with that name, but I think a CPA did a couple years ago. And and during that time of working with Better Business Bureaus, I was able to work with other BBBs. There's the BBB structure is kind of complicated. There's 97 different offices at this time, in 2022 throughout North America. So I learned that the Fort Worth Better Business Bureau was a completely different office, and everything than the Dallas one. And so I broke off and with a couple other sales professionals, and we were known as Bold, which I think was a corporate member of WSEM for a couple years. Um, and then from there, I started really understanding, just not only backlinking, but directory advertising, and like how a link could actually boost an overall brand. Not just a web page, but it could also help lift social media channels and funnels and landing pages and everything like that. So I guess kind of coming into the current period. From there, I was approached to be the president and CEO of the Better Business Bureau for the BBB of Northeast Central Louisiana and the Arklatex. So it was kind of over 3 states. And I quickly learned that just because you're really good at understanding digital or maybe really good at sales does not make you a really good president. So one of the things about being a president is having, a lot of my opinions or perspectives or things like that aren't things that you could just, like openly share. And I really missed the opportunity to engage and help, businesses. And at the presidential level, like they were like, hey, you're actually helping all of these, businesses with their SEO and everything like that. You're supposed to be doing all this other stuff. And so I decided to become like a director of development for hire for different regions of Better Business Bureau, where sometimes they may be struggling with, is BBB relevant, in this really fast emerging digital age. And so now I've got a team of people that have been working, with me for at least a decade, sometimes more. And so we've been kind of rebranding ourselves now under Shane Arts. But the other thing that I learned is there's more trust signals, especially with everything that happened with the pandemic when we were in isolation. Like everything that we did kind of was looked through the digital landscape, and so it made it real easy for scammers to take advantage of that. And also too, it made having authentic trust signals really important. So one thing that I always realized was uh, what what I like to do was, white hat SEO. I like to do play the long game on the organic side, and so it became trust, truth, and transparency. So I started saying, well, like, well, do you work directly with the Better Business Bureau? Is it exclusive to the Better Business Bureau? And so I basically started responding to that with, if it has to do with trust, truth, or transparency, online, then that is kind of our space, And so started working really closely with Yelp, started really working closely with like Google reviews, local Google guides. Um, and just looking at Trustpilot, I believe that our team was the first American entity to officially sign, the help people with Trustpilot. So looking at all those trust signals, and their strengths as well as their weaknesses to help people navigate what's best for their self or their brand, and who should they trust out there. So. So I would say too, like I still am a big believer in Better Business Bureau and the standards of trust and everything that makes that there, but also too, also would love to talk about trust, truth, and transparency beyond the Better Business Bureau.
Man, that's you've got to have a bird's eye
Yeah.
view on um, just a ton of businesses, and seeing like where things can go careening off the edge for successful business, and the
hmm
opposite where a business like is kind of just floundering, and then suddenly just a few steps and off to the races.
Exactly.
You got
Exactly.
yeah, I'd love to hear some stories how like applying these like changed them.
Well, so I think the one of the big things that I've been finding is people will sometimes see Yelp and Better Business Bureau as competitors, and I don't see them that way at all. They're kind of um, they when they you can get them to work together, kind of like something you said in an earlier one of these where you said when sales and marketing work together, it's amazing, and so and a lot of times they're viewed as competitors. Well, I've noticed too that Better Business Bureau is often thought of as a nonprofit organization, kind of grassroots, very localized and usually very low or no budget. And then Yelp, on the other hand, is a giant for-profit publicly traded company. And so usually when there's an issue and I'm looking for a particular keyword, I'm usually going to see either Better Business Bureau or Yelp on the first page of Google organically. And so what I've tried to help people too, because a lot of people have really strong opinions about Yelp and really strong opinions about the Better Business Bureau. So I try to showcase how when you get those both together, it's like doing paid and organic at the same time. And then then you can almost be bulletproof, So one way I often do that is, get them as a BBB accredited business. One thing I think that's out there in the digital landscape is they'll just say, oh, because BBB, you just get a backlink from them. You don't need to be an accredited business, and it's a no follow link. Um, Things that I think people should look at is Better Business Bureau reports on everyone, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so most of the people at BBB are not an accredited business. So that's a really good way for your competition. If you've got a track record that's really good, you've got some great reviews, you've got some longevity, behind you, go ahead and go through the process, to become a BBB accredited business. And then that gives you, like, you get to use what they call the dynamic seal, which is another backlink, but it's a backlink that you can roll over. Um, and it actually pushes from the domain authority into the website. So kind of like a guest post, but you get new link juice every time a new IP address kind of interacts with it. So I see
Huh.
those as a lot stronger than maybe just doing, like a guest post on a domain authority, of maybe a 20 or a 30, by using Moz's, domain authority tool. Um, by getting it from there, then you can use keywords, branded keywords, structured keywords, of what relates to your business, and then it certainly helps you rank. And then when people think, oh, they don't really, BBB is not really tech savvy, like just look up someone that has a bad rating with the Better Business Bureau, like or an F, and see where that shows up, And so a lot of those companies spend a lot of money, trying to get the BBB off the first page of Google, like organically. They would love for that to get buried. And so a lot of times, That's why when people have an accreditation, they have an A plus, they'll put it in their Google AdWords, they'll put it in their Yelp, they'll put it in their social media, and get that on the front page. I was surprised too, because a lot of times, you know I think people read a blog or something like that says like, get the citation, like just get a listing, just like Yellow Pages and that kind of stuff. And so they'll put BBB on their website, and what that does is that gets the BBB's attention, for copyright infringement if you're using the logo, because when people like look a company up and they see that A plus or A minus or BBB accredited business, they think, oh, like that's trustworthy, and they're very protective, of that part of the brand. And so if you just have BBB A plus, but you're not an accredited business, a lot of times the BBB will come after you and be like, you can't use that logo. You got to take that down. And then people are like, like, well, who are you to tell me to do that? And then it gives them, depending on, like the location and who's handling it. That's one of the things too, where sometimes people get a bad taste in their mouth about Better Business Bureau. And it's not easy to become an accredited business. A lot of times I think people think that it's easy, because if you're doing the right thing and you're kind of following, like the BBB standards of trust, then chances are you're probably going to be accredited. But especially, in the digital marketing world, there's so much gray hat stuff, there's so much black hat stuff, there's so many things where like the entire strategy, is just kind of built on something that's not sustainable, and you're just being like, hey, how long can I keep this going? um and it's kind of like Google's eat algorithm. I mean, I know you guys know that, but when people say like, how does it work, I say, like Google's eat. So you have to be an expert at what you do. If you're not good at what you do, um, then chances are it's going to catch up with you. Like if you're buying fake reviews, or you're trying to get, buying a credibility from things that nobody knows, eventually somebody's going to shine a spotlight on that. So then the authority in the Google eat algorithm, so E for expertise, A for the authority that says this person is legit or licensed, or like someone trustworthy to do business with, has to be trusted by folks. And so, like, if that authority is maybe something like Yelp, there are some people that trust Yelp, and then there are other people that are like, no, like I've given my real estate agent 5-star reviews. They obviously helped me buy or sell my home. Like I can prove it, but their filtering algorithm took my review away, and I can't see it. So therefore I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and I don't like anything, that Yelp does. And then there's other folks too, on the Better Business Bureau side, that if they call to complain about something at the Better Business Bureau, and the BBB actually engages, and investigates, and they find, okay, well, we hear that you're complaining, but after an investigation, we found out that this really isn't a valid complaint for whatever, like reason, then they think, well, then I don't trust the Better Business Bureau, like anymore. And then they throw that baby out with the bathwater. So it also depends on the people that are giving the authority and giving the whatever it is, if it's a star rating or a letter grade, or like a number, that people trust and rely on those. um, and so with Better Business Bureau, regardless if you're an accredited business or not, that the when you have that BBB seal, basically it means that you subscribe to their standards of trust, which are that you will build trust, you'll advertise honestly, you'll tell the truth, you'll be transparent, you'll honor promises, you'll be responsive, you'll safeguard their privacy, and embody integrity. So a lot of digital marketers will put up a website, but they can't get accredited because they have no privacy policy, like on the website, or they're like who cares? What about that? And so that's one of the things too that is a really big deal. Um, Especially with click funnels and that kind of stuff. If I'm clicking on one thing thinking I'm gonna, get an answer, but then my information is sold to like 30, people, um, that's not gonna help me build trust. And so I think one of the reasons why Google leads over other search engines is because they take these same standards of trust, um, and they look into the like that's where a lot of the algorithm changes come from. I don't think Google just says, "Hey, we like changing the rules every couple years." I think a lot of times, that happens because so many people are cheating, or they're ethically or morally fluid. That Google wants to make it so that it's clear. Like what the answer is. Um, One of my big takeaways from one of the recent state of searches is Google doesn't want to be an answer. It doesn't want to be a search engine. It wants to be an answer engine, and it wants to know the answer it's giving you is correct. And so if it finds out the answer it's giving you is shady or not clear, then they start coming up with a lot of these algorithm changes. So, I mean, if you think about, I guess it's been almost 12 years of me working with Better Business Bureau, like either as an employee or as a vendor or as a president or a 1099 contractor. Um, I've kind of worked through several different algorithm, changes, through Panda and Penguin and Mobilegeddon, and all those things. But I've always found that, like if you're doing the right thing and you're following the standards of trust, you usually come out okay or unscathed. It's the ones that are always doing something a little tricky that are like, oh, the bottom fell out, and stuff. And so that's when they get dinged.
So is there like a how much of the vetting process is manual versus an automation? Is there like they're pulling past reviews and like reviewing manually? I mean,
So how do you become accredited with the Better Business
Yeah.
Bureau? Is that
yeah.
so?
Yeah.
Typically, like you go through the process with a human being. So that's something too that frustrates a lot of people is they just want it to be an automated process. And I would say too, a lot of people don't know that Yelp is pretty strict too. Like if you want to open up a profile on Yelp or even Google My Business, they're not just going to like just put them out there. But BBB does a very thorough vetting, process that goes into actually anytime that you're in a particular industry, you can go to the BBB rating, and you can see like a complete overview, like for the rating and exactly how that's determined. Full transparency, you can drill down into every number of what things come up to be, and you could be like, oh, if I applied, there's a chance that I would be an A minus, because I haven't been in business that particular long that for such a long time. So usually I think the first thing that BBB checks for is complaint history with the Better Business Bureau. And so because there's different offices all over the place, something that's always been kind of a thing that people do is they just, if they get into trouble, they just rebrand. They just be like, okay, well, we drug that name through the mud. We'll move to another state, or we'll try to figure out something, something else, and then come up with a different name. So BBB, especially for younger businesses, it lets people know like these are not shady characters. Like we were able to look into the background of the principals of the company. They're not trying to be like silent partners and buying somebody else's reputation. So that's one of the first things. One of the first things that they check. The second thing is the type of business. I like to use real estate as an example because on my first day with the Better Business Bureau, I had a lot of friends that were real estate agents, and I was like, "Oh, you should get accredited," And this is an interesting thing. It's kind of like, not everybody wants the rank, like number one on Google. Some people don't want to have great SEO. And I remember when I thought about that, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess." Some people don't want to be right up there. And so real estate agents told me that they know that your average person that buys and sells a home has no idea the difference between the agent and the real estate broker. A lot of times they're not reading all of that stuff. They don't know where to see if this person's, real estate license is valid or how
Yep.
long they've actually been an agent. But they do know Better Business Bureau. If I'm saying I'm a real estate agent, and I'm servicing this particular, county or state or whatever, that they're in compliance with what all the rules are, to make sure that there's no issues. So they told me too, they were like, they let all the new young real estate agents spend all their money on the realtors and the Zillows and the Trulias and Redfin or whatever, like the new thing is. And they like to keep their BBB accreditation a secret because they know, like the average person, they'll be like, well, where do you check? All they have to do is just put doubt. They were like, oh, you're working with so and so. I didn't realize, that they were a licensed agent, and then the person pulls out their phone and then they start doing research, and then they were like, well, where do I check? And then there's a different real estate commission. Everybody's got like a name for like, and each state has got different rules, regarding, real estate. So maybe they're an expert on real estate in Texas, but once they cross the state line into Louisiana, there's a whole different, set of rules, or going into New Mexico, a whole different set of rules. Um, so BBB will check to make sure that you've got those licenses, and then they might want to keep that BBB accreditation, kind of like in their back pocket, something that they can show once the person has, had the value, they're ready to do business, but they can sense that they're not ready to pull the trigger because there's some hesitation about trust. Then they use that, the kind of close the deal. So, and different types of businesses. So like a food truck is going to be completely different. So I help a lot in like Las Vegas, Nevada,
Wait,
and there's a
a food,
great,
hold on, a food truck can get accredited by the
yeah,
BBB?
exactly. Yeah. And so
Yeah, that's
too, when you have a food truck, you might be like, hey, I'm really good at barbecue, and so what I should do is just take the smoker on the road and start serving people. But that doesn't mean that I'm actually licensed to serve food. That doesn't mean that my chicken hasn't been left out in the sun, or, I'm not, wearing gloves or breaking certain health, code violations and that kind of stuff in order to do it. And then I've also found too, going back to the SEO parts of it, it's really a good thing to help with the restaurant industry. Like when I started, in 2011, I didn't think people would check the Better Business Bureau, the see where to go for lunch. But I also didn't think that people would take pictures of their food and become professional food critics and write them for Yelp and Open Table and everything like that. And so, if somebody has a bad experience, like they get a couple one-star reviews on things like Open Table and Yelp, but nobody's like checking and vetting those. A lot of restaurants, like I know in the DFW area, like Cindy's Deli has always been, like a big proponent of BBB, just being like, like, hey, we're standing behind, Better Business Bureau, these standards of trust. We want, you to leave reviews, but at the end of the day, we're going to do the right thing. So going back to the process of what goes into accreditation. So they look at your time in business. Something that's new, is that you used to have to be in business for a year or two before you could even apply. And so, because a lot of times people start off in business and they think like, oh, I'm going to be, well, something else too about me is this all started as a theater company. So I worked with a lot of emotionally intelligent, like actors, and people that study psychology and those kind of things. And so one thing I did before BBB is I ran a theater in Deep Ellum. And I thought, well, I want to have my own space, but I did not know about city politics. I did not know about parking ordinances. I did not know about like what it's like to have a building in Deep Ellum, and so there was a lot that, if I had known all of that for the first year or two, I may not have pulled the trigger and opened that facility.
yeah.
So looking at how long have you been in business and how long have you been consistent, I think is a big thing. And I've seen that in other things too, like on the Google Guide process. Like how often do you leave reviews? Are they helpful? You know, how consistent are you at doing them? Do you only do them when you're in a bad mood? That kind of thing. That time in business, I think, is a really important key. Transparent business practices, failure to honor commitments, licensing, government actions. The other thing too that I think a lot of people don't realize about BBB, and I think since we all are in digital marketing, there's a lot of advertising and marketing people say they started the Better Business Bureau. So the origin story of BBB is because back in 1912, people did not trust advertising. So business leaders had to band together, basically to self-regulate. Otherwise, you would have to have a creative license to make a website, or to make an ad in a paper, or things. And so that's the first thing that Better Business Bureau did for decades, was just say, like, hey, if you see an advertisement and that business is BBB accredited, then you can trust that advertisement. That was the goal of it. The rating system, I think, started, like about 10 years ago, or so. I mean, that's only a fairly recent thing that BBB was known for. Reviews was even less than that. Um, so that's the process, and how you become accredited. I know we've got like a lot of conversation streams going on in there, too. What should we, which tangent should we go on out of all of that?
Well, I mean, so they're putting a lot of labor into like into vetting, like Yelp and Better Business Bureau. They're putting labor and into like um, into vetting businesses,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
Google is turning around and looking and going, I need to find trust signals. If you're willing to open your doors to these companies and show, like, open the books proverbially,
Mhm.
okay, that's a really strong sign. Because
Right.
if you don't, okay, fine, you're out there in an island, doing your own thing. I'll have to look at other signals, but I'm gonna have bigger questions, because do you have secrets? I don't know. um,
Right,
you
right,
know,
exactly.
none dead from salmonella poisoning from that food truck, but okay, great. I don't know. the Yeah, that's I mean, that's so. And you said something that at the beginning of the sorry, I want at the beginning you were talking about but people look at them as possibly competitors, yeah, like Yelp and
Mhm.
Better Business Bureau. It sounds like, maybe in your consultancy, you're spending a lot of time, like, trying to help people, like, connect and find different places and tear down walls. And go,
Exactly,
no,
yeah.
no, I don't know if that's a question or just go for it.
Or just, yeah, talk a little bit about that. Well, I think too, I mean, Yelp wants to have a good standing with Better Business Bureau, and so Yelp does everything it can to like showcase that its reviews are trustworthy. To do a throwback to one of the DFW groups where we had Curtis Boyd come in from the Transparency Company, that I know because he's a BBB accredited business out of California. Um, he was wanting to do the same thing. Like I when I asked people who had more than 55-star Google reviews, I'd be like, look at that. And they if there was more than 50, that seemed to be the threshold where they were like, they're fake. They would just be like, no, I, as a business owner, I get ads where I'm solicited to get fake reviews. There's solicitations to write, negative, bad reviews on my competition. And so that's why Curtis and I's paths kind of crossed. Oh, and I should also do a shout out to Jason Brown too, with review fraud, another a great DFWSEM, like monthly meeting where he showcased, like how people would kind of spam reviews or make them so that you couldn't trust them. We want people to trust, reviews. And for those businesses that have, like 500 5-star reviews. We don't want them just sitting back there and resting on their laurels, being like, okay, well, great. Like they want to keep that track record, going. And so Yelp, I think too, when he said too, Yelp is one of the strongest ones at vetting, the reviews. And so if it looks like you just left a review, in a on a Yelp page, but you've never left a Yelp review before and you don't use Yelp, you don't leave anybody else reviews, then that could get Yelp to be like, well, wait a second, maybe this guy was, only wrote one review for his friend and never wrote any other reviews, for a long time. And that's not always the case, and sometimes, like people will say like, hey, I had such a great experience, I want to write a positive review and I will sign up for Yelp just so I can do it, and so Yelp vets reviews, and sometimes that frustrates people tremendously because they'll spend a lot of time getting those 5-star reviews, and then their algorithm kind of comes in, and checks where the IP address is, how often do they leave reviews, and then they'll keep them on there. So that's the other thing too. They say like Yelp deletes my reviews. They'll keep them on there, but they'll put them on, like a not recommended part. So they don't delete anything, and you can still find them. But the big value that I see in Yelp and BBB working together, is using the fact that Yelp is a for-profit company, that Yelp was first, to get integrated into Apple Maps and iPhones and Amazon, in a lot of places. And even though BBB is also in those places, those are also for-profit companies, and so I'm sure when Amazon is looking at who, like, are they going to talk about Yelp reviews first, or are they going to talk about, BBB reviews? A lot of times they're going to look at the one that's paying them more money. I mean, just in
Yeah.
full transparency. Um, and so I'll say too, like for a lot of my clients, I'll say like put inside your Yelp that you're BBB A plus accredited, and that way, if they're looking at reviews and you're not perfect with 5-star reviews, then they know, okay, well, if I trust BBB, I see it's right there. If I trust Yelp, more, then I see that that's right there. And then if you're good and you're good on what I call the trifecta, if your Google My Business is solid, your BBB is solid, and your Yelp is solid, then you're pretty much bulletproof.
Man, that's
That's a lot to
yeah.
take in. I'm sitting here like,
Sorry.
okay,
All right, I'm a small business. I don't know. You've got a general process of questions, or like you go through recommendations. I don't know. Is there a general like consulting process?
Well, so I've got a team of about 20 people right now, and we're actually kind of growing and thriving. So I've got more people
Dang.
coming on. Well, the other thing too, let me talk a little bit about the theater side, because I know that that's weird, And
yeah,
so
Oh, awesome.
in the in the digital domain, my first theater company in 1993 was called Commedia del Carte, and there's an art form that you guys are probably familiar with, and you don't even realize that you are, called Commedia dell'arte, which means the comedy of the artist. I believe the phrase was coined in the Italian Renaissance, when they would have these stock characters that worked in the marketplace. And so you've probably seen like a picture of the Harlequin, like with the diamonds, or you've seen like the Punchinella character. If you've seen some of those like 20s, 30s pictures of the guy dressed all in white eating pasta and that kind of stuff, those are
Yeah.
the Commedia stock characters. And so they only have a few. There's only three classes of characters. Um, and so there is the fools, like the Harlequin and the fun thing, like the Harley Quinn character from Batman, is kind of loosely based, like on that character. Then there's the lovers, so they have all kinds of different relevant, names. And most commonly, there's one called like Isabella. Um, The males will be named something like Flavio or Fabio or something, and then there's the old men. So the old men are kind of like the misers. They're kind of gluttonous, and they're all just basically clowns. So there's three levels of clowns. Um, but marketers have been using them, ever since like people were coming and going in the marketplace, to be like, how do I get attention to my fruit stand, or how do I get attention to whatever I'm hawking my wares? And they would do that through Commedia. And so my first theater company, we would just roll into crowds of people, and just set up the stage, um, and then ask the audience what they wanted to see. They would tell us what they wanted to see, and they would be like, well, funny, that's exactly what we do, and then we would improvise a long form improv, like, as to be like, that's what the show was. um, and so I say all of that because the people on my team, um, are usually, they've got degrees in theater, they've got degrees in performance, they've studied literature, they're quick on their feet, they're quick at improvisation. And then I also noticed too that Google doesn't hire like computer scientists for a lot of their innovations and stuff. They usually hire like arts minded, people to pioneer a lot of the new innovations. And so I think one of the reasons why we're so successful is because, if it gets to a place where you can automate a process, then we can rely on our technology and the breakthroughs in artificial intelligence and all of that. But eventually, you're going to need an emotionally intelligent human someplace in the process, um, to uh, to engage, and so that's where we're really successful, is that we put the right people in at the right time to make an authentic, human engagement. And so one of the ideas I had in the rebranding process was Commedia d'arte, which is, there's actually a loose website up where, one of my digital artist friends that ran an agency called the Laughing Cat Arts, she created the logo, and we're using those same kind of stock characters on things, like Google or social media functions to actually engage. And there's still, even though these platforms may be new, the way to get, like attention still goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. And so, and also too, when you look at the word commedia, it's actually com, like .com, and then media. So when I had the domain commedia.org, everybody was after that domain for a really, really long time. But by um, using artists, and actors and people that are engaging, I think that that's one of the things too that really help us in the process. So going through the question, like what does the process look like? So we identify, somebody that may be having a difficult time. So once again, I'll use a BBB example. So if somebody's getting looked up a lot at the Better Business Bureau, and we have a report on them, or the BBB has a report on them, and it looks like, we're showcasing that they're an A+. We've checked out some stuff, they're just not an accredited business. Then we'll reach out and try to set up a time with them when we can actually screen share and say like, hey, this is what, let's go through the customer journey, like your customer journey specific to wherever county or state or local, place that you're in. And this is what we see, and then we show them all the trust signals. We show them like, well, look, Yelp is on top of realtor.com in some places, for real estate, and they're like, oh yeah, Yelp's for restaurants, and I'll be like, but is it? Let's look a little bit closer. Let's actually do
Yeah.
a real search live, and then when we take them through the live search and they're just like, oh, wow, look at all of this stuff. Instead of like just looking at an analytics page or looking at the, like the report, like what's actually going through the process. And when they see that, usually, we help them with, if they want to go through the application process, that transparency and authenticity and bluntness gets them to a place where they're like, like, okay, and BB accreditation, I think one of the things that is so hard about that is it's so affordable that I think that people really don't see the value, in it. They're like, wait a second, I'm spending $1,000 a day on pay-per-click, and you're telling me that BBB accreditation is like $1 or $2 a day, that doesn't seem right, and especially and you're going to get all of this, stuff with it. Same kind of thing with Yelp. I think if you are using Yelp properly, it is very affordable. I think a lot of people try to do Yelp on their own without reading all of the stuff or going through, like the courses and reading, like the things that they give you. And then suddenly they're upset, because their card's getting charged. Same thing too, Kevin. I know you're in paid search. You probably talk to people that are like, I can do this, and then after their cards are maxed out, they're like, maybe I should take a class or or learn how to do it, or get somebody that knows.
Yep.
I'm usually talking to people that are on the trying to recover. The it's just too expensive. I could do it, but yeah, but this it's just too much right now. But I find so many times that people try to like they'll look at paid as a jump start, right?
Mhm.
But it's not. It's the exact opposite, right? It's the last step. It's okay. We've nailed down all of the business steps. We've got our process down. We got our organic and our local going right. Um, and then you put on paid. Great. It works wonderful together. You try to cut all of that out and just get right into the paid. It's like you're gonna pay for it one way or the other.
Right.
Yeah, it's an expensive lesson.
Yeah, yeah. And just kind of like, with Yelp, once they've spent so much money, they think it's all like that. The other thing too is either they're humble and they realize they messed up, and they need your help, or they're like, nope, it's all crap. It's
Yeah.
all
Yep.
and then they don't trust it at all. And so once again too, I think that's why we as digital marketers, have to make sure that we're always doing everything to make sure our trust signals are always in place and on point.
That's why I
Yeah.
rely on people like you, the two of you, to. Yeah, I mean, I I can't do anything for a bad website and a bad business.
Well, there's a lot of stuff too. The other thing my team is developing is something called Green Check, which I think is looks at just all the trust signals as well as, many more. If you go to Green Check AI, we've basically taken all of the trust signals or trust monitors, and kind of put them all in one place. So if you're looking for, like my domain authority, is my SSL certificate coming up for renewal, is my domain, protected, any of that information, that's all that can all be in one place, and you can just check it out for free. Or there's also, especially if you've got a digital agency or multiple websites, one thing, when the SSL certificate started expiring, there was a law firm, that was like, they reached out to their digital agency and they said like, oh yeah, they know they're fixing it. Well, they fixed it on their primary site, but they forgot about the 18 landing pages and funnels that were all out there with different, different domains and stuff. And so
Oh
these
no.
tools are really good at being able to, like see everything that's coming up all in one place. You don't have to log into different portals and check everything out. And we're working too so that you can see everything from, like things like your Facebook and your Yelp and your BBB, get that all in the same place as well. But there's a lot of aspects that go into trust signals. One thing too that I think gets overlooked a lot is spelling and grammar, because um, I've seen scammers can make a WordPress site, in a matter of seconds. There was one that showed me like on the phone, just being like, well, this is how we do it. This is how fast we can spin up a website and how fast you can take one down. And you guys probably know, like, if I'm not really paying attention to the details, you guys can probably do it really fast. And so scammers have AI generating the content. They can get a similar domain name and have a website spun up in seconds, and then they could also make it all go away, like Thanos, just
Yeah.
uh you know uh so then too, when people are like, oh, I fell for the scam, like, where was that website? Then it's gone. So that's why too, when you look into the spelling and people don't realize that there's a spelling or grammatical error, like out there, especially too, like when you're using it in SEO, if you're going really, really fast, that's something that most people are like, oh, that's spelling. That doesn't matter. But I've helped a lot of people where they weren't ranking and that kind of stuff just because of spelling mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I've worked with some bigger multi-million dollar companies, and
Hmm.
you'd be surprised. People will buy domain names, throw up a site, blast a scraped email list, send them all there, scam them out of money, and then forward the domain to the right website.
Ah, yeah.
So it looks like nothing happened, and the good site is the one scamming, and when the good site had nothing to do with what was going on.
Right, exactly.
And
Wow.
before the security team can figure out that new domain's been purchased, everything's already happened.
Hmm.
So it can scammers and bad people are getting way better at their jobs. So good trust signals really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I learned too, during what they call the Great Resignation. A lot of people said, like, forget it, I'm quitting. And then when they went to go back to find jobs, um, they were filling out all their sensitive information in third party websites, and just giving away, like everything about their identity. And so I talked to business owners that are like, well, I can't find good people, and then I talked to a lot of people that were like, I can't get jobs. Like, somebody stole my identity. And so I'd never seen that happen so much as it did, like during I'd say in the last 12 months.
Wow. I knew we were in a a lot of scams going on but I didn't even think about all the people trying to get employment. You just go fill out every form you can,
Yeah.
and uh, oops.
Yeah.
Wow. Um. So how does your so you're a lot of visual arts and like being able to read the crowd. Your team has got all kinds of experience. Is this like how does this play in? Is this like just like how like learning how to present information differently or better or just
Well, I think it's kind of just a new digital platform, So one of the things too in 2000, so I ran a theater in Deep Ellum up into 2010. In 2010, one of the things that got me to be like, I need to look at what's next is, if you can imagine how different the world is. In 2010, we were doing a show. It was a couple years before. I want to say it was like 2000, maybe 5 or 6. There's a show written by Mindy Kaling from The Office called Matt and Ben. Um, and it was like, what would happen if Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were women, or when they got the idea to write Goodwill Hunting. And so we were doing that at our theater, and I was, advertising. We had reviews, critics coming from the Morning News and the Star Telegram and the Dallas Observer, and that show sold out all the time. And the office was still like Mindy Kaling was still really up and coming. She wasn't the superstar that she is now, but I realized that we were selling out every night because of Facebook. Not Facebook, MySpace. So Facebook was just starting to come onto the scene. It was still kind of in a college thing, but that old school MySpace thing with people authentically engaging and being like, "Oh my goodness, like you've got to come see this," and instead of just running it in a blanket ad, they had ads. They were able to go see everything in the Observer for anybody listening outside of DFW. Those are like the big magazines, like around town. So they could see that and they could share that information. But we were using kind of like the onset of social media, and then by the time Facebook really started grabbing hold in 2010, I realized that everybody was about to have a theater. They were all about to have like their own stage, their own microphone, their own TV station, and so it was going to be a lot harder to get a group of people to come see like something that didn't have a superstar in it, or support like a play or those kind of things. So then I started really paying attention to things like on social media, and then that's when I realized it's all the same thing. It's all like it's like, are we following this person because they're attractive? Is it sexy? Are we following them because they seem like they're experienced and they're a thought leader? Are we going to sign up for this course by this person that did this thing? There's a lot of people out there that have courses that haven't done anything. Like they're
Oh,
just like, you should take my course. And like, why? Like what are your credentials to be offering offering an
I,
online course?
I literally saw a TikTok course
Uh-huh.
and I looked up the company on TikTok. They had 45 followers. The images that they shot of the person, he had one video go viral and it had nothing to do with his business. It got 1.5 million views. He gained 138,000 followers on TikTok from it. But even his videos after that, nothing broke 1,000 views. And I'm like, you can break 1,000 views with like 100 followers. So you're
Right.
138, 139,000. You didn't prove anything to me. Why am I going to pay for your course?
Right,
There are
right.
courses
Like,
that are really selling themselves as, we're going to teach you how to make your own business, and then they're going to basically package it. So now you've got all these people that are paying money, and now they're going out. They haven't gone through all the learning experiences, but they've gotten done
Mhm.
with the class. And yeah, buyer beware.
yeah,
That's a man.
yeah.
That is such a proliferation of problems. I mean, how do you? I mean, I don't know. There's too many to even talk about in that way.
Yeah, we may have to do another one just on that,
Yeah.
just on online courses. I did want to mention Trustpilot a little bit. I don't think we talked enough about them. So Trustpilot is kind of that's the review side over from Europe. I They first hit my radar through TripAdvisor because people outside the United States, uh, know about Trustpilot reviews, but it's been kind of a recent thing with them coming to USA. Maybe in the last, I think they've always been around in certain industries, but now they're starting to come around. Piggybacking on most of the primary things that we look at reviews for, like Yelp. But because they've been in multiple countries and they've been around, a lot longer, I think they've got a lot of things to offer. And unlike things like the Better Business Bureau that has 97 different, like offices, or Yelp that, is a little bit like they've got a headquarters in San Francisco and a call center in Scottsdale and a couple other places. But Trustpilot is actually very small and efficient. Like they've got a New York office. Um, and they really work with, like people, kind of like what Google does with their Google Guide system and that kind of stuff. Getting people to be supportive of it, and I think their interfaces are really good too. So um, don't be surprised if you see a lot more Trustpilot, like on the first page of Google, for a lot more industries rather than just travel and hospitality, which is where I think you see them now, especially on the international side.
I don't even know. Can you tell us about? I don't know anything about Trustpilot. I mean, I've heard the name dropped a few times, but I don't know what it is.
So yeah, so Trustpilot, so I believe they're publicly traded on the London Stock Exchange. So they're probably closer to like a Yelp than a BBB, but I think they're kind of a little bit of both. And so they're throughout other parts of the world. And I think one of the reasons why they just pretty much weren't, starting so much on the US side is because, US had Yelp and BBB and so many other, different review sites. I mean, there was I can probably go through a list, of all the different ones, and there's a lot of them that like there's Nextdoor, which depending on what neighborhood you're in could be really good. I've also seen Nextdoor be really bad. There are some places where I said, hey, these are people in my neighborhood that are organically, like getting the post and like things, but then I've also seen it be nosy and violates people's privacy and break all those, trust, standards that we talked about in the beginning. So Trust Pilot, I think is kind of been there, and I think on a previous thing too, we were talking about how a lot of chat was, came to us from overseas. A lot of influences on that. Trustpilot, because of uh, its streamlined interface, I think has a lot of advantages, over Yelp and BBB. I think too, they may even, according to Moz, have a higher domain authority. I'm not sure. Let's see. I think
Uh,
Casey, were you
Trust
just pulling it
Pilot's
up
at
there?
92. Yeah, Trust
Okay,
Pilot's at
92.
92.
Yeah,
Yelp
and
is at
then
93, and BBB's at 91.
all right. So
Dang.
yeah, they're all three right in the
Yeah.
90s. So well, cool,
Is that
man.
like a
TripAdvisor's at 94.
Oh yeah, well TripAdvisor too, but TripAdvisor kind of like Zillow and Realtor, it's very specific, like
Yeah.
about the industries. So these other ones, they are like when people say like, oh BBB, they report on contractors. I was like, like almost any business interaction where you think where trust is a factor, BBB has got a place in there, and then it's been over 10 years that Yelp has also been there too. I mean, I think Yelp took the lead in the home services industry, 10 years ago. Like they were getting plumbers and air conditioning contractors and everything like that. Um, and now too, I just pulled up Trustpilot, and they've got banks and jewelry stores and pet stores and um, insurance and real estate agents and all that kind of stuff in there too. But yeah, no matter
Yeah.
what business, one thing I that changed my life is I realized that everybody's in sales. The people that say that they're not are just really good at sales, at convincing you that they're not in sales. Um, but every interaction, before a sale is made, we had the trust has to be there, and so I think too, when we're trying to figure out how to scale, when we're looking at the innovations in technology, we always have to lead with trust, truth, and transparency. Because if we're scaling, when you were talking about things that go off the rails, a lot of times too, like if it's about, well, let me say this is something too that I often say a lot, is that better means something different to everybody. And for a lot of people, when I say better, they want easier, they want more automation, they want they want less hands-on. They don't want to get caught in the weeds, and then for other folks too, better means, that they even if they're already at their best, they still want to innovate. They still want to be able to control. They still want to keep mistakes from happening, or issues with quality assurance. And so depending on where your needle's pointing on the better side, we're either getting better, or we're not. So you just need to make sure that, usually if you're leading with trust, truth, and transparency, you're moving in the right direction.
Well said.
Yeah,
Um,
very well said.
and okay. So before we started this, I've really got to. I want to hear more about this. Like QR codes of are heavily used by the blind. You said. I was
Yeah.
like, what? I I want to hear about
Yeah,
this.
we were pre-showing and talking, and all of a sudden stuff started coming up, and I'm like, should I just hit the start stream? So yeah,
So another thing too, I've worked a lot in the blind and visually impaired space too, and I didn't mean to use that for digital and digital marketing, but usually a lot of breakthroughs that I had in digital marketing were because, I mean, so many people are that you don't have to be completely blind. You may just be visually impaired or low vision, and I was thinking one time when we were at State of Search, I was looking at how many people were wearing glasses, like just right now, like Kevin's wearing glasses. um that's 1 out of 3, and I don't know if Casey's got perfect vision. um but when you're navigating the internet, we almost always take for granted that it's geared towards sighted people, with good vision. And if they don't have good vision, then they're wearing glasses or contacts, or making, corrections for it. um, but machine learning, and when Google was crawling things, um, by thinking about folks that may be blind first, that also helped SEO rank. So when Google was crawling to find the right answer, for something, I think I mentioned too in the pre-show, one of my biggest takeaways from one of the earlier State of Search, which is coming up too. Get a shout out for State of Search. Um, but one of the State of Search things was Google doesn't want to be a search engine; it wants to be an answer engine. And so my wife and I are really into horses, and so I got a new horse, but they all thought that was a dog because I didn't clarify in the image or in the captions or anything like that, that it was a horse. I named my pet's name, which I won't put in here. It's not my password or anything like that. But um, they all thought that it was a dog, and then I started realizing, okay, anytime I did a social media post, anytime I did a website post or something like that, I thought about them, first before I thought about like the average, sighted person. Because there I had digital marketers that would use codes and all kinds of stuff that would keep things easier for them operationally on the back end, but it didn't always necessarily like help them rank or help the right, images or headers and that kind of stuff come up. And then I just got really good at SEO because that's the way that Google was reading, everything. It was looking at, it didn't care about the images or that kind of stuff. It was looking at the organization, the structured data, and was I spelling things correctly and articulately for somebody that didn't have eyes to kind of fill in the blanks. And then going back to QR codes, um, the blind often use the white cane, as you might have seen, and so they had technology too, where their white cane can actually pick up on technology. So a lot of times, if you're navigating a space like an airport or something, they relied on either QR codes or like little things that would emit stuff like to our phones, like the little contact when you put the two phones together. So it would let them know this is a men's room or this is a woman's room, or, at the airport, this is terminal A, and so they would get information in through that. And I think as we move away from the internet of just websites and move more into the internet of things, like the URL being something that could be read and scanned, is probably going to become, more of a thing. And I think we had a little bit of a dip. We thought, oh, it's going to be the latest thing. We're going to need it, but the timing wasn't right with technology. Like we had to have an app on our phones, and stuff. And I remember another thing that the actors do, too, when we're not calling and doing all that stuff, is we do, like interactive murder mysteries. And I made, using QR codes, I made them part of the clues for the interactive murder mysteries. So it used to be, like you would start a theater production by saying no photography, you know, or don't distract, like the performance, to take selfies and stuff like that. And then we embrace that as part of the culture. And so
That's
now
brilliant.
Yeah,
so now when
it
we're doing
really
a
is.
show, we're like, get your phones out, and so then we got them hashtagging, and I've got QR codes on the different clues, and they get to play their own little CSI montage, like whenever they're trying to figure it out. So
That's cool.
I would have
awesome.
never
What?
thought of using like that. Man, that's God. I hated on those because they would be championed by people. We're gonna
Yeah.
do a whole big promotion. What are we gonna do? We're gonna do a QR code. I'm like, hold on, that's it. The QR code is gonna. That's what I'm supposed to be. And it was too many times. Like I just started hating it. I think there's a lot of people that have that. Um,
Yeah.
until they
Overhyped.
got yeah, too early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
Well, cool.
So before we wrap this up, we've been asking everybody. So, what's their favorite podcast to listen to? If you're a podcast listener.
Oh man. Um, so one that I do just kind of out of habit is if you guys know who Darren Hardy is. So he used to be the editor of Success magazine, and so in addition to being a digital marketer, I'm also a serial entrepreneur. Um, and so his are usually really short. They're, I would say that, like, on average 5 minutes. Sometimes they go a little bit longer, but you can get a bunch of them in a row. And he's got a thing too that you can subscribe to, that's just Darren Daily. So if you start your day, it kind of gives you like just different things that you can be better. He's a leader on the hashtag of better every day. So that, when I was saying too that we do a lot of things beyond, Better Business Bureau, and I started doing better every day, that was part of some of the stuff that he does. I really really like his. And then a lot of the other ones, too. um I mean, they're kind of like usually project specific. So I would say if I got to pick one, I would say, like, look up Darren Hardy, and he's got a couple different series depending on what it is that you're going to. But every digital marketer that I've turned him on to, has found it useful.
I like the
Awesome.
idea of having a
And what
series of
about a
shorts.
favorite book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I've got so, like, I'm looking up right above my webcam, and I've got like a whole bunch of bookshelves. There's just so many. Um, Yeah. So right now, one of the things that I'm really looking at is called The Speed of Trust, and so it's something that I've read a couple times, but it is something too that isn't specific to digital marketing, but just talks about how important it is in every business transaction. So I would have to say too, with everything that I do, it usually comes back to that. I think it's my third time listening to it, on Audible.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Awesome. Well, I say let's end it there. It was awesome having you on. I learned a lot. There's some stuff I've got to get implemented on some of my clients now.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Well,
Tim.
cool.
Appreciate it.
No worries. Good to see you guys. Talk to you soon.